This is Rude Tudors, hosted by English Renaissance expert Liz Rodriguez and nerdy laywoman Nicole Keating. Join our raunchy jaunt through the historical and the hysterical as we explore the weirdness of the past and its presence in the present.
Hey, Nicole.
Hey, Liz.
Have you been to Starbucks lately?
Actually, yes. I worked in a Starbucks yesterday.
Yes.
Actually, Renaissance neckbeard things.
Yeah.
I was at Starbucks just nary 24 hours before.
And what did you get there?
Ooh, I had a feast at Starbucks. I had
You had all those boiled eggs that they
I had
keep
every
in the
boiled
fridge.
egg. I just took them out of the individual packages. Had one of these brand new fancy like bacon cheddar sandwiches that they've got.
Did they heat it up for you?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so you're getting hot foods
I'm
at
getting
Starbucks.
hot foods at Starbucks.
So that was a $12 sandwich you had.
My total was I paid $15 for my breakfast at a fast food restaurant
Your
yesterday.
total will be $52.75.
Right.
And you've got to leave a tip because at that point you're an asshole.
Oh yeah, no, it was actually closer to 50 when I count in all the boiled eggs.
Yes.
I forgot about those.
You're on that all boiled egg diet right now.
Yeah, it's working out pretty well. I have a lot of protein.
But coffee is a big part of our society. I mean, just looking at the corporatization of coffee stores and just how much these caffeinated drinks cost.
And the subsequent sort of DIY backlash to the corporatization of coffee where you have all of these
You mean like Pete's?
like Pete's. No, just all these like really tiny local places that open up. I mean, I know in every single neighborhood you can just Google coffee shop and have 7 things pop up that are not a Starbucks.
Yeah.
In addition to the 14 Starbucks that are already in the neighborhood.
Are any of them called not Starbucks? Or
Ooh.
like Starfucks? I want something
with
that's very
little
anti-Starbucks.
with little asterisks in the middle of the
I mean,
fucks.
okay, if that's what we need to incorporate.
Yeah, I think.
Can you put swear words in your incorporated name?
I'm sure you can, because
hope
there are bands called like, I think there's actually a band that's just called fuck. I want to say,
But are they incorporated?
maybe not.
Like if you get called to court, this is the people against
Apple Assholes Incorporated.
Apple Assholes. Is that your band?
Yes. One of many.
So coffee's a big part of our culture. Do you have any good coffee related stories? Like crazy things you've done on coffee?
On coffee or with coffee. I do know that there
with coffee.
Well, I say that because there was a guy.
You had that coffee enema that one time.
I did not have a coffee enema, but somebody did on the internet film themselves neti potting with different substances. So first they did the salt water, then they did regular water, which
has the amoebas in it that kill your brain.
It has the brain-eating amoebas, and also I've accidentally done that one time, just forgotten to put the saline solution in that already hurts.
I noticed being in your place one time that you had a neti pot in your shower, and I remember thinking, oh my God, I hope she doesn't just use shower water and put it in her nose. But I didn't want it to seem like I was snooping, but I saw it in your shower and there was a neti pot in there. So you just, I imagined you just like dragging it along the bottom of the shower.
Yeah, I scoop up the dirty water from the bottom.
The runoff.
That hasn't
green.
drained because of the excessive amounts of hair in the drain.
Yeah.
So I just use that bottom water. It's
use the hair to floss once it gets in there.
Get in there. But so he also the second substance was coffee, a hot coffee.
Hot?
So,
no.
Yeah. Well, because you're supposed to have warm water in the neti pot, so it was probably warm coffee.
How did he react?
It was he got through it, like you saw it come out the other nostril.
No.
But the look on his face was terrible, and then he choked a little. The last substance was Jack Daniels, and it was he tipped his face and screamed and just like dropped the neti pot. He writes, it's one of
well, because it's a mucous membrane that you're putting alcohol on. That's gonna sting.
Right. Oh my God! I mean, it was a dare. They write. It's one half of one of my favorite webcomics, Married to the Sea, which just puts out like a single cell every day.
Okay.
They're hilarious. But this guy, I guess, just did it on a dare, and it was. I mean, I had to watch the whole thing.
I want to say I've seen a YouTube video of somebody attempting to snort alcohol, because I think that's along with soaking tampons in vodka and putting them up your butt. This is one of the things that teens are supposed to be really into doing. Don't put things in your nose. Basically, it just as a general rule, nothing should go up there,
but
right?
Coffee in particular, which I have never delved into doing weird stuff with coffee.
Speaking of weird stuff with coffee makes people kind of cuckoo. And what do you know? People went cuckoo for coffee during the Renaissance. So that's our topic for today. We're going to be discussing a particular document called the City Wife's Petition Against Coffee.
Against coffee.
Yes, from 1674. So again, we are not staunchly in the Tudor period, but we're in the 17th century. It's
every time you mention a year, I have to like sort of go back in my head and just picture what the costuming looks like on some BBC thing. Just so you know, that's what I'm doing when I'm going, okay, 1674, where are we? Great, I got it.
What's your frame of reference? What are people wearing?
1674, there's a lot of, we're not in full Marie Antoinette yet, but the hips are getting wider.
We're headed there.
Yeah, we're headed there. We're
probably
definitely
wigs.
Headed there.
I'm almost positive there are wigs going on.
Yeah,
because that was a restoration thing.
Yeah, there's a lot of wigs. This is also, isn't this close to the advent of like a lot of like Puritanism stuff? So I picture a lot of pilgrims, a lot of buckles.
Yeah. Well, this is post-Civil War, and the Civil War was led by Puritan types. So yeah, you're in. Yeah. When we talk about the Restoration period, it's the restoration of the monarchy.
I think of the movie Restoration with Robert Downey Jr. and Sam Neill.
Oh, I think I tried watching it and was bored to hell and stopped. Or maybe
it's Meg Ryan is in it with a terrible Irish accent, and at one point,
I'm Meg Ryan.
Basically.
Let's get to the City Wife's Petition Against Coffee, and if you go to rudetudors.com, I will have at least the first page of this posted up there. It's actually only 4 or 5 pages, so I'm just worried about copyright, folks, even though this is outside of copyright. We could probably post the whole thing up there. But at any rate, I want to read the subtitle, which is "Presented to the public consideration the grand inconveniences that accrue to their sex from the excessive drinking of that drying and enfeebling liquor." Coffee is dehydrating.
It is.
You know, so it's a pamphlet, and it's told from the perspective of a woman, but whether or not women actually wrote this thing is up for grabs. So let's read some parts of it and try and figure out what exactly is going on, because there's some crazy stuff. Now, in order to understand this pamphlet and to understand coffee culture and coffee house culture, we need a little bit of historical background. So there's been a lot of scholarly work done on the new or changing ideas that were associated with the coffee house and with coffee being introduced to English culture. So when people thought about the coffee house, or when people study the coffee house today, they associate it with democratic participation, with newly emergent capitalism, with scientific inquiry, doing experiments and talking about them in the coffee house.
I picture a lot of young dudes talking about things and waving their arms and maybe saying actually at each other across the room.
Pointing at things. So obviously the coffee culture that we have today of the corporate Starbucks is really different than what was going on back in the day when the coffee house was this place of exchange of ideas, and it was really exciting and it was new, and people are getting out of the ale house and going instead to the coffee house.
And very sort of proto-hipster, that it's really off the beaten path, that you're really discovering this hole in the wall place of like, oh man, have you heard about this new cool place? And nobody else is going there except for smart people who want to shout about their ideas.
Shout about it.
I picture I picture the dudes from Les Mis standing on tables and yelling
about stuff, talking about big ideas.
Yeah.
And coffee houses actually became really popular, and in one study says that in 1663 there were more than 80 just in the city of London.
Oh wow.
And people describe walking through the city and seeing one on every block, which is kind of how we talk about Starbucks today. So while their purpose was different, it seems like the saturation was similar. People were even still going to coffee houses when the plague was going on, 1663 to 4.
Seems legit.
Yeah, because you got to get that caffeine. You need that fix. They're addicted. And it wasn't just in London, in the city proper.
Caffeine addiction never happens.
That's why you get the shakes in the morning. Oh, no, wait, that's alcohol.
That's a Jake Legs.
Yeah. But the coffee house is spreading to Scotland, to Ireland, the provinces, so it wasn't even just a city thing. People were into coffee houses. So these were casual social places for middle and upper class people, people who could afford the couple of cents for a cup of coffee. And they would sit in this non-hierarchical or mostly non-hierarchical setting and just spout off. I wonder, is the coffee house the internet of the early modern period?
Yeah, but definitely.
And there were probably trolls too, like people who would just sit in the corner to fuck with people.
And hate readers who would just like come and just like listen to it and hate everything that everybody was saying.
And then talk with other people about how much they
hated
those ideas.
There's always been these spaces
where people exchange ideas and hate each other for them. So literary scholar Markman Ellis, he's written this book, The Coffee House, A Cultural History, and he's done some of the work on the big historical shifts that are associated with the coffee house. And this is what he has to say. In the lactification of the coffee house, the branded chains have eviscerated the bitter flavors of the coffee house history. The heritage with which Starbucks prefers to identify is the romance of the coffee bean, rather than the less palatable coffee house history of gossip, scandal, and sedition.
Ooh, yeah. Juicy.
So we're going to talk about some of the political associations of coffee houses in Renaissance England. So not only was this a place of ideas, but like I mentioned, there are some different folks running around. It's not just upper class people talking about ideas. You do have some middle class folks and maybe even people lower down on the social food chain. If you can afford to pay for the coffee,
yeah,
you can hang out there, and you won't be given a hard time like you would at an ale house where the barkeep will be like, you've been here for 3 hours and you've bought 1 pint.
And that does still hold true today.
For sure.
That you can get a cup of coffee at some little coffee house and bust out your computer and sit there for a really long time. Yeah.
It's true. Whereas at a bar, if you tried to do that, you order 1 PBR and stay for 4 hours. You're going to get some dirty looks.
You're going to get some shade. Yeah. Definitely.
So this one pamphleteer likes this mixing of people in this space. And he says, each man ranks and files himself as he lists, so as he wants, without regard to degree or order, so that oft you may see a silly fop and a worshipful justice, a gripping rook and a grave citizen, a worthy lawyer and an errant pickpocket, a reverend nonconformist and a canting mountebank, all blended together.
I love that.
Yeah.
I love that description. I love that cast of characters.
Yeah.
Oh, man. That's a sitcom.
It is called Just the Coffee House.
Ye Olde Coffee House.
Ye Olde.
So that we get a sense of the time period.
Right, because otherwise how would people
we
know?
We don't have mountebanks today.
No. So an interesting thing to note is, or a question is, were women in these coffee houses? And I think the older school of scholarship says, no, it was just a male space. But there's evidence that they were there. There are records showing women running and owning coffee houses that still survive, at least for London, but probably all over England as well. And there are reports of women being regulars and upper class women having dinner there and meeting with friends there. So women are a part of this coffee house culture as well. Maybe
cool.
They're not represented as much in the evidence, but they were there. So I want to talk about this pamphlet now to think about other ways women were involved in this coffee house culture and the consumption of coffee and the larger debates about whether or not coffee was a good thing for England, because the jury was out. People were on different sides about if we should be drinking this much coffee and where are we getting it from and is that a good idea?
We'll be right back with more Rude Tutors right after this brief message.
Hungry? Of course you are. I said so. Come on down to Scissor Jizzlers this Scissor Day for half-off creamy poppers. Buy our new Soylent Green Light. Same great taste, only 50% of the people.
Only truth cannot count days, people.
Scissor Jizzlers. Whatever doesn't kill you makes you stronger. So eat here and get real.
If that ad left you hungry for more, be sure to check out Scissor Jizzlers in Episode 3 of Space Happens, premiering March 27th on the Fake Geek Girl YouTube channel. Now, here's more Rude Tutors.
So let's move on to the pamphlet that I referenced earlier. So just to say it again, the City Wife's Petition against coffee. So what do you think women's problems might be with coffee. Like, what could you possibly complain about? Like, other than coffee breath, what's the problem?
Well, coffee breath is pretty bad, especially if you're not brushing your teeth every day. That's rough.
Yeah.
But
if you just swish a little beer around, like that, doesn't that kill the germs?
I'll have a Sam Adams too.
Wait, a Sam Adams.
Yeah.
It's a future beer.
It's a future beer. Traveled back in time to be drunk by people with coffee breath.
And clean out mouths.
Do you think, if the wives are not drinking coffee and they are encountering their menfolk who have drunk a lot of coffee, I can imagine there's already just a clash of attitudes, because one of them's all hyped up and the other one is like,
calm down.
Stop bouncing around the house. Just stop.
So you're being annoying.
You're being annoying
is what the main problem is.
That might be where it started.
Well, yeah. So you're already getting on your ladies' nerves, and this is a quote from the introduction, which is, it's calling men out, and it's being pretty harsh right from the outset. So let's see the nature of this harshness. The pamphlet reads, that since 'tis reckoned amongst the glories of our native country to be a paradise for women, the same in our apprehensions can consist in nothing more than the brisk activity of our men, who in former ages were justly esteemed the ablest performers in Christendom. Yeah, so basically this is saying, England used to be considered pretty dope. I mean, it was a paradise for women, and this actually was something that was recognized on the continent. When people from Europe would come to visit England, they would say, wow, these English guys really let their women run around.
Like they do a lot of stuff. They're out and about.
Yeah.
They're seen.
Right, they're seen. And for a time period where there is a very strong gender hierarchy, there is considerably more freedom going on in England at the time, I think, in a general sense. Obviously, there are going to be exceptions, but English women had it better than, say, probably Italian women. But so not only is this a paradise for women, but also it's a paradise because men are industrious, the brisk activity of our men. So you guys used to work real hard.
Yeah.
So from the outset, though, there's the implication that you guys aren't working so hard anymore, which is kind of counterintuitive, right? Like if you're sucking down all this coffee, what are you doing with your time?
Productive. Yeah.
Well,
that's why it's free in offices.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a good point. Oh my God, I never thought of that. That's so obvious, though.
That is why, because if you show up to work and you don't have coffee or don't have some sort of caffeine source readily available, most people at least in America right now, have to be at work between like 7 and 9 a.m. And that's really early. And I think that if not earlier, if not like 6 a.m. And so I think if there wasn't like free coffee available, I think there'd be problems with people actually falling asleep at their desks.
And caffeine addiction is a real thing. Yeah. And that's what happens, and that's why it's bad for you from what I've read from articles on the internet, is that once you get addicted to it, you need a base level just to function normally. So that
I know
makes
nothing about that.
No, not at all. There's no addiction. So the voice of the pamphleteer goes on to explain some more. Okay, so what's wrong with these men? What has happened? But to our unspeakable grief, we find of late a very sensible decay of that true old English valor. Our gallants being every way so Frenchified that they are become mere cock sparrows. Exactly, total burn. They're mere cock sparrows, flattering things with a world of fury, but are not able to stand to it, and in the very first charge, fall down flat before us. Always got to go back to the impotence strips.
Always got to go back to the
Never did men wear greater breeches or carry less in them or any metal whatsoever.
Interesting.
What's interesting?
I'm thinking about sometimes if you drink too much coffee, there's this delicate balance between okay, I'm awake, I'm focused, I'm going to get my work done. And if you just go just a little too far, you can't focus.
I'm almost at that point right now. I think.
Bam.
Well, where you start like just shaking and
you can't focus on anything, right? So I love this idea of like you really want to accomplish all of this work. You really have these big britches and these big ideas, and you're like, okay, I'm going to accomplish all of them. But then in trying to simultaneously accomplish all of them, you're just like,
you're just fluttering like a sparrow.
Around like a little sparrow, and then you probably pass out because you crash.
Yeah, that caffeine crash. That's why you need 5-hour energy, because there's no crash afterward.
That's what they were missing.
Yeah. So the pamphleteer goes on to cast more aspersions on masculinity. So I want us to pay attention to some of the imagery that's being used and what kind of declarations about male potency are being made, because that's a big theme in this. It's basically, you men aren't men because of all the coffee you're drinking. So the purported she says, there was a glorious dispensation, 'twas surely in the golden age, when lusty lads of 700 or 800 years old got sons and daughters. And we have read how a prince of Spain was forced to make a law that men should not repeat the grand kindness to their wives above 9 times in a night. But alas, alas, those forward days are gone.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
They're really calling them out.
What are they saying?
They are saying, well, first of all, I love the idea that you had to make a law that you can't have sex more than 9 times in a night.
And then it's called the grand kindness.
Grand kindness. Like,
inflated.
we're tired.
But also, like, this is my gift, my kindness unto you, dear wife.
Yes.
Oh, that's what they call their penises, the grand kindness.
Ooh, I like that.
So, 8 times, okay. 9 times, that's just inhumane.
So,
like, a man's gotta
unusual.
sleep.
Bitch has gotta sleep. We gotta be up early to tend the farm or whatever. So first of all, that's a lovely little tidbit right there.
Yeah.
But they're also saying that now we're falling down on the job. Coffee.
Yeah, we're
can't,
only having sex 5 times in a night.
And this is getting pretty unacceptable.
And not only are we falling down on that job, but there were dudes who were 700 or 800 years old doing this in Bible times, and here you are at 35, and you're only doing it 5 times. Like, what's wrong with you?
Come on,
you're falling down on the job. So our takeaway here is that Englishmen used to be strong, lusty, industrious, horny. That was old times. Not anymore.
Now they're Frenchified.
No, now you're Frenchified. Like, the Spanish are making you look bad. Like, the people in Spain are able to do this. I mean, Spaniards, I think, have a way with English women, probably.
Yeah.
Just like the English accent appeals to so many American women.
Mm-hmm.
I would imagine the Spanish accent. I don't have any evidence for this. This is just me.
This is conjecture.
This is conjecture. This is me, like, fan fictioning the Renaissance. So here the pamphleteer comes out and says it. We can attribute to nothing more than the excessive use of that newfangled, abominable, heathenish liquor called coffee. And drying up the radical moisture has so eunuched our husbands and crippled our more kind gallants that they are become as impotent as age and as unfruitful as those deserts whence that unhappy berry is said to be brought. So you men are all dried up, just like those crappy berries and the deserts that they come from. So coffee's dried up men's sexy moisture. It's turned them into eunuchs. It's taken their balls away, literally, figuratively, sexually.
Take my balls away. Unfortunately, I don't know any other lyrics to that song.
Watching every moment. I don't know. Something about things slipping away.
I don't know well enough to
sing the line one more time, though.
Take my balls away. And then all the lights fade and the disco ball comes in. And then it's a man and a cup of coffee dancing together. Take my balls
And then a guy, this is when we do the stage version of this song, the interpretive dance, a guy in testicle costume comes out and he's waving to the fop. Later.
He's waving to the fop, and the fop is waving to the justice of the peace.
Drinking
Suddenly
his coffee.
Somebody dumps a thing of coffee over their head.
And then it turns into flash dance, right?
Oh yeah, that is, she pulls the chain and makes that like lovely chair pose, but it's just coffee.
Raining down. I'm gonna have weird dreams tonight.
I do remember that I do have two stories of coffee incidents. I've spilled coffee on computers twice, including on yours.
Yeah. I remember.
One was on mine the summer in between freshman and sophomore year of college, and then just this past summer. So
Remember that time I spilled coffee on your computer, Liz?
Yeah.
Yeah, I remember.
yeah.
It was actually
Actually,
a double dirty chai tea latte.
Oh, was it?
Because that's what I was into and still am.
Yeah.
Not that it made a difference in killing my computer.
Killing the computer. Well, then we tried to put it in rice, and the rice had bugs in it.
Mites in it. That was so messed up. It's like, which is worse, the mites or the coffee?
That was just a horrible series of events.
Yes. That was a bad day. And then I hugged you because you were very upset, and then your dog got really upset and tried
because
grinding on you.
I had done that to myself before, and I was so mad because I'm like, I should know better than to gesticulate wildly when there are electronics and coffee around.
See, that's what coffee does. No good comes from coffee. These women had it right.
I'm fluttering around like a Frenchman.
You were all sparrowing out and just messing
This is what happens. This is what happens.
So notice with this newfangled, abominable, heathenish language that's being used, these are barbarian overtones. So already we're starting to further distinguish England over here and those fools over there where coffee comes from. And there are all sorts of racial undertones to people objecting to coffee and where it comes from because it's associated with the Ottoman Empire and those dirty Turks. And of course, dirty is in scare quotes. This is what those people, those Mohammedans drink.
Yeah.
And we don't do that in England. We stick to our ale.
Stick to our ale, and we don't have these weird, cool, domed towers or bright colors here.
No.
Just coffee.
So coffee comes from a dry desert place, according to this pamphlet, and English ladies like their men wet. Going on record, we've talked about wetness before and the associations of the wetness with the humors and having all your liquids right in your body because that's going to make you a well-balanced person. So from the pamphlet, quote, "They come from it with nothing moist but their snotty noses," she says. So when the men show up from being at the coffee house, they're not wet in the good way. They've got snotty noses, nothing stiff but their joints, nor standing but their ears. Am I right, ladies?
Can I get an amen? Can I get an amen?
They pretend will keep them walking, but we find by scurvy experience, they sleep quietly enough after it. A betrothed queen might trust herself in a bed with one of them. Nor can all the art we use the art. So that's like, I'm gonna wiggle around naked, and you're going to sleep. I can't revive them from this lethargy. So unfit they are for action that, like young men, when called upon duty, their ammunition is waning. No, their ammunition is walked away. You got nothing in the chamber, buddy, is what you're saying. Peradventure they present, but cannot give fire, or at least but a flash in the pan instead of execution.
Yeah.
So she's comparing sex to war, which is, what was done during the period. But it's all this
powerful metaphor.
Your gun has no ammo. You guys can't perform sexually, which is the last thing you want to do when you are talking to men. I mean, that's how fights get started.
Yeah.
Then as now, you insult a man's manhood, his masculinity,
But they already seem too tired to fight, so maybe you're safe.
Too tired to fuck, too tired to fight.
Yeah.
But not too tired to drink coffee. Am I right, ladies?
Can I get a amen?
I love the idea of a stand-up routine from early modern England. You know what I'm talking about, ladies. When your man goes out to the coffee shop and he comes home with that coffee breath.
I believe that you have hit upon your next big creative project, which is the Renaissance stand-up comedian. I foresee just like a webcam YouTube series.
Ooh.
What's the deal with coffee, ladies?
I don't have a good Jerry Seinfeld voice, but I definitely have his cadence down.
Yeah.
I know how he makes those jokes.
Yeah.
Everybody does.
So Renaissance stand-up comedy. Goldmine.
Have you ever noticed how when you're drinking coffee and there's all those grounds at the bottom, what's the deal with that? Do we not have strainers? Do we have no means of getting rid of it? I mean, come on. Do I drink it? Do I chew it? And I thought this was a drink. What's with the mixing? With the solid and the liquid? Come on, folks.
You're really good at that. the inane Seinfeld joke.
So women aren't happy with the lack of sexual potency. And if all of this sex stuff wasn't enough, men be talking. This is something that usually women get complaints about, is women are yapping, but now they're just as bad as women. The pamphlet says, we have reason to apprehend and grow jealous that men, by frequenting these Stygian tap houses, will usurp on our prerogative of tattling and soon learn to excel us in talkativeness, a quality wherein our sex has ever proclaimed preeminence.
That is our thing. Yeah. You took our thing.
Remember how we were annoying when we were talking too much? That's what you sound like. You don't want to be like women, do you?
Do you?
So there, you gotta have your misogyny thrown in there, and this is where we need to start considering the author of this and how satirical it might be. I mean, especially with the exaggerations of the biblical 800-year-old men having sex 9 times.
I like it. I really like it as a satire.
Yeah,
I really like it as a satire because it is quite funny.
But let's put aside for a moment the issue of coffee. Whatever happened to good old-fashioned beer? What, are you too good to drink that anymore? The pamphlet seems to say. And I quote, certainly our countrymen's palates are become as fanatical as their brains. How else is it possible? They should apostatize from become an apostate, like go away from tradition, from the good old primitive way of ale drinking, to run a whoring after such variety of destructive foreign liquors, to trifle away their time, Englishmen be trifling, scald their chaps, and spend their money all for a little base, black, thick, nasty, bitter, stinking, nauseous puddle water.
Puddle water. I hate your garbage drink.
Yeah. Let's keep things English. And also, beer tastes better. At the very least.
At the very least.
You should be drinking beer because it tastes better. But also, let's keep things English, can we? The pamphleteer seems to be saying. And
keep England English.
Keep England English. And let's get more xenophobic. So, quote, yet as all witches have their charms, so this ugly Turkish enchantress by certain invisible wires attracts both rich and poor.
Have you ever had actual Turkish coffee on a menu?
No, have you?
It is real. I mean, I like the bitter flavors of coffee, so I like it quite a bit. But it is strong. If you're not a fervent coffee drinker, and if you don't like that bitter taste, it's basically like when you're having beer and somebody offers you like the hoppiest IPA. It's that version of coffee. So I can understand why he's like, oh, I hate your garbage snack, stop it.
It's extra gross, and you're spending all your time in the coffee house, and you're not even drinking anything that's good, or even more importantly, that's English.
It's from our country.
Yeah, so notice how the coffee is being not only racialized, but sexualized. Mm-hmm. It is Turkish, and it's a witchy enchantress who's tempting you into drinking this foul puddle
Dance
water.
of the Seven Veils with a coffee cup.
And I think that coffee houses feature that kind of iconography as well on their signs and in their design, kind of like the Starbucks mermaid, like spreading her mermaid tail.
Yeah.
There were Turkish enchantresses on the signs of these coffee houses. So another problem.
That's a fun image. I like that.
So another problem with coffee, which you would think wouldn't be a problem, is that it sobers people up. And that's still a myth that continues to today, is if you drink too much, you should have a cup of coffee. And we know that that's not true. But the pamphlet says, yeah, it sobers you up when you get too drunk, but then that just motivates you to get drunk more often. So it's this vicious cycle where you get drunk, and then you go to the coffee house and sober up, and then you go back to the tavern and get drunk. So the pamphlet ends with a call to action. And, there's a callback to last week's. Stay tuned for that. So, I quote, wherefore, the premises considered to the end that our just rights may be restored, and all the ancient privileges of our sex, so women, preserved inviolable, that our husbands may give us some other testimony of their being men, besides their beards, snap, and wearing of empty pantaloons, double snap, that they no more run the hazard of being cuckolded by dildos. Yeah, and we know that those existed, so, I'm going to open this drawer. Don't make me
open my toy drawer. Don't make me.
But returning to the good old strengthening liquors of our forefathers, that nature's exchequer may once again be replenished and a race of lusty heroes be got, able by their achievements to equal the glories of our ancestors. So, we need to get things back on track. No more coffee. Get England back to being English. Otherwise, I'm going to have sex with this dildo, says
Says this pamphlet.
And they want to outlaw coffee drinking. Sorry, I love it when I make myself laugh. Okay. So they want to outlaw coffee drinking for those under the age of 60. So like coffee prohibition.
60?
Yeah.
That's a long
which makes
time.
that really settles it that this is satirical.
Yeah.
Like, obviously we can't do that. But what would coffee prohibition look like? Like speakeasies?
Yeah.
And the pamphlet recommends instead of drinking coffee, you should drink medicinal English booze like beer or cock ale.
What's that?
Exactly. I told one of my friends about this, and we'll probably talk about cock ale at some point on the show. And he was like, do you mean penis wine? Like, what does that mean?
What is that? What is that?
Shout out to Evan Walker for the penis wine joke. So cock ale is like this, it's like a hot toddy. It's like chicken soup, but with alcohol in it. Yeah. So,
Ooh, tasty.
it still kind of grosses me out.
Oh, I think it sounds good.
We can make some cock ale sometime then.
Excellent.
So let's talk bigger picture. Why does this document matter? Why might coffee houses have been disliked then? And we've kind of touched on it already. There's the possibility for sowing sedition, discontent, challenging the status quo when you get all of these different kinds of people talking about ideas. And also, coffee houses are a place for the dissemination of news. This is the period in history where newspapers are first starting to become a thing. So you would go and find out what the news is. And that was supposed to be a common coffee house greeting when you walked in. It's like, so what's the news with you? Like, what's going on?
It is the internet.
It's the old-timey internet. So royalists, people who were aligned with the monarchy and the king especially, didn't like coffee houses because they thought that they could spread false rumors and news. And like we already talked about, the political backdrop is that there has been a civil war. And this pamphlet is written during the point when Charles II is king. So Daddy Charles I was beheaded, Oliver Cromwell took over and his son, and there was a military dictatorship. And then the English were like, okay, we give. Like, we'll bring the king back. And so finally the coffee house is associated with the literary genre of satire. Like Jonathan Swift was into coffee houses.
Of course he was.
Yeah, so we should consider...
Our bro, Jonathan Swift.
Yeah, who we bonded over many years ago.
Many moons ago.
And still quote...
To this day,
because the satire is so good and is so modern. And so the coffee house is associated with this move from early modernism to just like the modern period, because you have these new ideas. Also, like people who are into science and the scientific method, they're talking about this kind of stuff. Samuel Johnson, later on in the 1700s, the guy who codified the dictionary, the first dictionary, or the purported first dictionary.
That wasn't Merriam and Webster?
Was not Merriam and Webster. So this is a hotbed of new ideas, and people are hopped up on coffee as well. So it seems extra important, and we should consider what the satirist had to gain by writing this pamphlet. Is it to take people who complain about coffee to task? Is it to take people who are too into coffee to task? Like,
I think it's to take people who, not even people who aren't into coffee to task, but people who take this movement so seriously. You know, like we have the lens of history to look through and be like, okay, yeah, it's really cool that you were exchanging new ideas, but it's like the internet. We've always had these spaces, and this was just a new version of that space. Yeah. So I think it's somebody being like, look, guys, this is how you sound when you complain about this. It's really not that important.
Yeah. I like that a lot. This is how you sound when you complain about this stuff. Yeah. And also, what's with your preoccupation with not being able to have sex with your wife? Like, that there's always undercutting masculinity. Like, in order to disprove your opponent, like, this is an ad hominem attack. Like, you can't get it up.
Everyone's always worried about their dicks. Everyone's always worried about them dicks.
Well said, Nicole.
Thanks.
Well, that's all for this episode of Rude Tutors. If you like what you heard, please head on over to iTunes where you can subscribe to the show, rate it, or leave a nice little comment for us. It'd be much appreciated. Rude Tutors also recently did an interview with Sawyer Hepps of the podcast OC Dweeb. That episode should be available beginning Monday, March 23rd. You can find it on iTunes or at the website ocdweeb.com. For more information about Rude Tutors, the hosts, other productions that we work on, all sorts of things, there are lots of ways to get in touch with us. There's, of course, facebook.com/rudetutors, Twitter @rudetutors, or our very own website, rudetutors.com. There you'll find show notes and references for things that we've talked about, images we allude to, documents we pick apart. All of that's available at rudetutors.com. If you're interested in the other projects that Nicole and Liz work on, you can go to thefakegeekgirl.com, which right now is plugging Space Happens, a satirical space opera web series that we've both written and produced, and Nicole acts in. So check that out if you're inclined. This episode was produced by Ian Gray-Carey, and our theme song was arranged and performed by Shay Keating, with additional music provided by Chris Sherm.
Smellest thou anon?
You're such a dork.